There is a moment in every financial journey when the numbers stop being just numbers. They start to feel alive. They start to move without you pushing. And one day you wake up, look at your net worth and think, when did this stop being slow? For most people, that moment comes much later than they expected. Not because they weren't smart, not because they didn't want it enough, but because the beginning is the hardest part. We don't talk about that enough. Everyone loves talking about wealth when the chart is climbing. Everyone loves the stories of overnight success, the miracle portfolio, the crypto pump, the unicorn startup. Nobody talks about the months or years where progress feels invisible, where you question if you're doing the right thing, where you feel like the only person in your circle who cares about money while everybody else is chilling, spending, upgrading, and telling you to relax. We imagine the journey will feel like momentum, but the reality? The early part feels like pushing a heavy grocery cart with a broken wheel. It squeaks, it serves, it annoys you. And sometimes you wonder if it would be easier to just leave it behind and walk away. But the truth is simple. Wealth does not begin with progress. Wealth begins with persistence. The transcript talks about this moment when the growth from your investments is smaller than the amount you're contributing. It mentions how in the early years, most of the progress comes from your own deposits and not from the returns. That's the part nobody warns you about. Because when the growth is tiny, the temptation to quit is huge. If you've had those thoughts, why am I sacrificing so much? Why isn't this growing faster? Maybe investing is overrated. I want you to know something. That frustration isn't a sign you're failing. It's a sign you've entered the part of the journey most people never reach, the part where patience matters more than the numbers. There is a reason the early stages are slow. When you first invest, your money isn't the driver. Your decisions matter more than your returns. Your habits have more influence than the market, and that's why most people never get past the early curve. Not because it doesn't work, but because they stop right before it does. Think about it this way. Imagine you're trying to start a fire. You gather the wood. You strike the matches. At first, there is only smoke. Nothing catches. You try again. Still smoke. Still nothing. But if you quit after the first or second spark, you never see the part where the flame catches, and suddenly it's roaring. That is how wealth works. It looks like nothing for a long time, until it isn't nothing anymore. There's a story I love about a friend who started investing in his mid-20s. He was earning a very average salary. He didn't have family money. He didn't have insider connections. Every month he invested one small amount. Nothing special. Just simple and repeatable. For the first 5 years, his portfolio never felt impressive. If markets dipped, the whole thing looked depressing. Fast forward a decade, he wasn't a millionaire. He didn't retire early. He didn't buy a Lamborghini, but something changed. His contributions began to feel tiny compared to the growth. His money started growing faster than he could manually save, and that moment changed everything. Because now, it wasn't just discipline creating the growth, it was the power of compounding working in the background. This idea shows up in the transcript when it explains compounding with simple numbers and shows how returns build upon returns, but here is the part they don't teach you. Compounding isn't just a math concept, it's a psychological one. Compounding is a reward system for people who don't give up. Compounding says, if you can stay in the game when the progress looks small, I'll give you more progress than you imagined. Someone once told me that compounding is like time's apology for not rewarding you earlier. It pays you back later for the days when it felt like nothing was moving. And if you stay long enough, you hit the first milestone. The transcript calls it the 10K mark, and it shows how just reaching that amount changes your future growth potential. But the real importance of that milestone is not the number. The real importance is that 10K proves something about you. It proves you can stick to a plan. It proves you can say no when it matters. It proves that your financial future is not a dream or a wish. It's something you built. That is the difference between hope and proof. Most people never get proof. They give up before the moment when momentum shifts from your effort to your results. And for the people who reach it, something profound happens. They stop seeing money as something they chase. They start seeing money as something they build. The first milestone is not about the cash. It's about identity. Once you hit 10K, you never again ask, is this even worth it? You ask, how far can this go? I want you to remember this if you're still in the beginning. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not slow. You're just at the part of the story where the world can't see your progress yet. But one day, your money will grow faster than your effort. And when that day comes, you will look back and realize the slow part wasn't a punishment. It was preparation. Before we go deeper into the milestones that change everything, I want to pause on something that almost nobody teaches about money. Money isn't just math. Money is belief. Every dollar you save is a vote. You're voting for your future self. You're saying, I believe tomorrow is worth planning for. And that belief is what carries you into the first major milestone. The first milestone is the moment your net worth reaches 5 digits, $10,000. The transcript describes why this moment matters and how it marks the transition from building wealth through deposits to building wealth through growth. But the real meaning of 10K is deeper than numbers. 10,000 means you kept going during the phase where progress was tiny. It means you stayed consistent when everything around you tempted you not to. People don't struggle financially because they're bad with money. They struggle because they get tired in the quiet part, the early part, the invisible part. But here's what most people don't know. The money you save in the first few years doesn't grow slowly because the returns are weak. It grows slowly because your habit is growing stronger. That habit matters more than compound interest. Because when the world gets uncertain, your habit is the thing that keeps you investing. Not your confidence, not your optimism, not your excitement. Your habit is the part that whispers, I've done this for years, I'm not stopping now. I've seen people earn huge incomes and stay broke because they never learned the habit. And I've seen people with modest salaries become wealthy because they learned how to stay in the game. So if you're still working toward your first 5-figure net worth, remember this. The math doesn't matter yet. Your identity does. Then something surprising happens when you cross that milestone. Money stops being fragile. Think about a snowball rolling down a hill. At the start, it barely moves. It looks small and unimpressive. It needs help. It needs shaping. It needs hands. But once it starts moving on its own, it gains speed, mass, weight, momentum. You are no longer pushing the money. The money is pushing itself. That's the next milestone people underestimate. The moment your investments earn more than your monthly contribution, when you hit that point, investing starts to feel different. Growth begins to feel automatic. Even if the number is small at first, your effort is no longer the main engine. And that sets the stage for the second milestone. The transcript calls it the 100K milestone, and it shows this step as the point where compounding accelerates in a visible way. This is the point where your portfolio outperforms your paycheck. It's the moment you see a year of investment growth that's bigger than what you could save alone. 100K isn't random, it's a threshold in human behavior. When you reach 100K, money stops being a burden, money becomes a partner. Think about how powerful that is. Most people live their entire lives believing money is something they chase. They believe they have to work harder to get more. They believe financial freedom is something only the lucky get. But 100K changes the story. 100K whispers to you, you're not just building this, you're becoming someone who can own it. And that moment doesn't happen because you're rich. It happens because time finally joins your side. If you only take away one idea today, let it be this. Getting rich isn't about speed. It's about staying long enough for compounding to join the team. There's a quiet shift that happens after you hit 100K. You stop asking how to get rich fast. You start asking how to stay rich forever. You stop fearing down markets. You start respecting them. You stop trusting hype. You start trusting math. 100K is the moment the journey becomes real. And if you keep going, something even greater happens. Money becomes self-sustaining. That brings us to the third milestone, the one most people dream about but never reach. 1 million. The transcript describes how at this point, the portfolio's returns can exceed your income and work becomes optional, but here is the part that often gets overlooked. 1 million isn't just a number. It is the proof that your decisions mattered more than your circumstances. $1 million doesn't just mean you invested, it means you believed early. You stayed when it was boring, you stayed when it was slow, you stayed when nobody cheered for you. And once your investments cross that threshold, the game flips. You can choose to work or not. You can continue contributing or not. Your future no longer relies on hustle. Your future relies on growth. At that level, compounding becomes fuel. Every year, the portfolio grows faster than the year before. It becomes the engine that keeps moving, even when you rest. You get to enjoy the most underrated luxury in the world, choice. But here's the hidden truth about the $1 million mark. It doesn't happen because of perfect staging. Not because of the right stocks. Not because you caught a trend. It happens because you built the habit long before the reward appeared. And the habit is what makes the milestones possible. Even the transcript hints at this idea. In a subtle way, it emphasizes how persistence, consistency, and continued investing are the real drivers of the return But the most important part of the journey isn't the big numbers. It's the small ones. It's the quiet months, the slow years, the sacrifices nobody sees. The reward for patience isn't money. It's freedom. Freedom from stress, freedom from fear, freedom from living paycheck to paycheck, freedom from having your entire life dictated by someone else's schedule. And that brings us to the deepest truth in the entire wealth journey. Money doesn't change your life when you have a lot of it. It changes your life when you no longer need to think about it. In the next part, we're going to look at what separates the people who reach these 3 milestones from those who give up in the first chapter. And the answer isn't discipline or intelligence, it's something far more human. Most people assume wealth is built with spreadsheets, calculators, and perfectly optimized strategies. But anyone who's actually reached those milestones knows the truth. Wealth is built through emotion far more than intellect. Because the biggest threat to your financial future is not inflation or market crashes or bad luck. It's impatience. When the journey gets slow, impatience tells you to stop. When the market dips, impatience tells you to sell. When others are buying things you can't afford yet, impatience tells you you're behind. And that's the moment the journey becomes a test of character. One of the most important lines in the transcript talks about how quitting early is the worst thing you can do. Because you stop right before the curve begins to bend, that idea is bigger than investing. It applies to almost everything in life. The people who succeed don't succeed because they avoided discomfort. They succeed because they stayed during the quiet phase. The invisible phase, the phase where nothing looks like it's working. This is the secret nobody wants to admit. There is no moment when investing suddenly feels effortless. It is always a choice. Even when you have 1 million invested, you still have to choose. Do I keep my money in the market? Do I keep believing long term? Do I stay committed even when the world is loud? The 10K milestone teaches you discipline. The 100K milestone teaches you belief. The 1 million milestone teaches you trust. At each stage, you are training a different version of yourself. There is a story about a woman who reached the $1 million mark by doing something painfully simple. She invested a few $100s every month. She never stopped. Not during recessions, not during pandemics, not when friends told her she was being too boring or too cautious. By the time she reached retirement age, her portfolio had grown into millions. Nothing flashy, nothing complicated, nothing that required luck. She didn't need a miracle. She just needed a routine. That is the part people underestimate about investing. It's not about predicting the future. It's about staying when the future feels unpredictable. And that brings us to the most controversial idea in personal finance. You don't need to sacrifice your entire life to build wealth. The transcript ends with this reminder. It says that while investing is important, you are still allowed to live your life along the way. You don't need to wait until you're 65 to enjoy your freedom. You don't need to delay every dream. You don't need to reject fun or travel or joy. Money is not supposed to replace your life. Money is supposed to support your life. Building wealth is not a punishment. It is an invitation to live with more choice, more control, and more peace. So if you're at the beginning of the journey, here's your reminder. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to get everything right. You just need to stay in the game longer than the version of you who wants to quit. If you already hit your first milestone, keep going. You proved you can hold the line. If you already hit your second milestone, protect it. Your future self is watching. And if you're working toward the third milestone, remember this. No matter how big the number gets, the real reward isn't the money. The real reward is waking up one day knowing you don't have to worry anymore. That is what financial independence really buys you. It buys you rest. It buys you confidence. It buys you the freedom to make the choices that matter. And it all starts with the small moments you showed up for when nobody noticed. Money doesn't change your life instantly. It changes your life slowly, then all at once. Stay consistent, stay patient, stay committed. Your future is already waiting for you. Money is not just a number on a screen. It is the quiet proof that you chose progress over comfort. You chose patience over distraction. You chose your future over the noise. Whether you're just starting or already on your way, remember that every small action counts. Every deposit, every investment. Every time you stayed consistent when it would have been easier to stop. Your future self is already thanking you for showing up today. If this video helped you think differently about your financial journey, take a moment to support the channel. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, comment below and tell us which milestone you're working toward, and share this with someone you care about who needs to hear it. Your journey isn't just about money, it's about freedom, confidence, and peace of mind. Thank you for being here. Good luck on your path, and when you're ready for more, feel free to explore the other videos on this channel. See you in the next video.